Maya spent 18 agonizing months drafting the blueprints for the Horizon Tower. It was intended to be a towering glass building in the center of the financial district, and she viewed it as a true peak of her architectural career. She slept under her drafting desk, her diet reduced to stale coffee and vending machine crackers. She withdrew from her social life and pushed herself to the point of absolute exhaustion from the stress. Every angle, every pane of glass had to be precisely as she envisioned it. She had bet her entire professional identity on this single structure. When the development board awarded the project to a much older, deeply conventional firm, the rejection didn't just hurt, it broke her. She didn't handle it well. Maya sent frantic, bleeding emails at 3 a.m. She cornered the board members in the lobby of their building, demanding 15 minutes to re-pitch, arguing her case until security firmly escorted her out into the pouring rain. For weeks, she agonized over her drawings, pacing her apartment, completely consumed by the bitter injustice of it all. She couldn't sleep. She replayed the rejection in her head on an endless, torturous loop. To make matters worse, the last bid caused her own firm to lose money. They laid off a third of their staff, and Maya, now carrying the reputation of being erratic and obsessive, was the first one let go. Unable to afford her expensive city apartment, she was evicted. Out of options, Maya reluctantly packed her life into cardboard boxes and drove 100 miles to an inherited rundown farmhouse her grandmother had left her. The place was a total ruin. Her first night there, the temperature dropped below freezing. The ancient furnace was completely dead. Maya huddled in her winter coat under a thin blanket, listening to the wind scream through the gaps in the window frames. When it rained 3 days later, water poured through the sagging roof directly onto the kitchen counter. Maya hated the house. She hated the isolation. Most of all, she hated herself. She spent her first month in the country doing nothing but sitting on a rotting porch chair, staring at the overgrown weeds, clutching the rolled up blueprints of the Horizon Tower. She was trapped in a deep, suffocating depression, furious at the world for stealing the future she felt she was owed. The autumn mud outside slowly thawed into iron-hard ridges, and thick frost began to coat the inside of the farmhouse windows. Then, the first true blizzard hit. The wind battered the fragile siding until, with a sound like a gunshot, a massive branch from the old oak tree sheared off, crashing violently to the roof of the living room. Snow and debris covered the floor. Maya sat in the rubble and wept until her chest ached. She wanted to walk away, to abandon the property and sleep in her car, but the freezing air biting on her face offered no alternative. Nobody was coming to save her. No firm was gonna hire her. If she wanted to survive the winter, she had to patch the gaping hole in the roof. With no budget to hire contractors, she drove into town, bought a cheap hammer, nails and heavy tarps, and climbed the shaky ladder. It was miserable work. Maya, who had only ever worked on computers, wasn't ready for hard physical work. She smashed her thumb with the hammer so hard she nearly passed out. Her hands soft from years of office work, quickly became covered in deep, painful blisters. Her muscles cramped constantly. Every night she collapsed into bed, covered in sawdust, dirt, and bruises. But as she ripped away the ruined drywall and started pulling up rotting floorboards to assess the damage, she was forced to pay attention to what she was touching. She noticed the intricate century-old craftsmanship of the original wooden joist. She saw how the original builders had cut the timber to allow the house to shift and settle with the freezing ground. Slowly, her deep anger began to fade. She didn't have the energy to be furious about a glass tower in a city 100 miles away when she was trying to figure out how to build a strong wall. Instead of forcing modern clinical materials into the space, she started visiting local salvage yards. She spent freezing evenings reading library books on traditional joinery. She learned how to use a handsaw, the repetitive ruling motion eventually becoming a strange kind of meditation. She reshaped the house to breathe with the surrounding landscape, patching the wounds of the building while slowly roughing up her own hands. A local carpenter named Tom, who ran the hardware store, noticed her buying supplies and stopped by to check on the roof. He admired her restoration work, the way she had integrated salvaged barnwood into the living room support beams. Impressed, he asked if she could help him sketch a modest, structurally sound addition for the town's crumbling library. Maya hesitated, terrified of designing again, but agreed. That single simple project led to a commission for a local bakery. Then, a family asked her to design a sustainable cabin. Word spread about the architect who understood how to build with the land rather than on top of it. 5 years of grueling, gritty work later, this blossomed into a massive contract to design an eco-friendly, affordable housing initiative for the entire county. One afternoon, Maya walked through the thriving, beautifully integrated neighborhood she had designed from the ground up. Children played in communal green spaces, and the homes were warm and functional. The community felt alive. On a rare trip back to the city to secure permits, she drove past the newly completed Horizon Tower. It was a cold, imposing spire of steel and glass. Looking at it, she noticed a for lease banner hanging across the entrance. The building was mostly empty, a victim of a commercial real estate slump. Staring up at the sterile, unforgiving walls, she remembered the girl who had nearly destroyed herself trying to build it. It looked exactly like a cage. Maya rubbed her thumb over the permanent, thick, rough skin on her palms. She realized that having her absolute dream completely shattered was the most painful thing she had ever endured. But without that total collapse, she never would have picked up a hammer, and she never would have learned how to build a life she actually wanted to live in. Making things harder on ourselves. When Maya loses the bid, her deepest pain doesn't actually come from losing the job. It comes from her refusal to accept reality. Pacing her apartment at 3 a.m., firing off desperate emails, and staring at old blueprints on a rotting porch are things we all understand. It's that exhausting phase where we fight tooth and nail against what has already happened, insisting that the universe made a mistake. The story shows how our own stubbornness Our absolute refusal to let go of rigid expectations usually hurts us far more than the failure itself. Sometimes a no is a lifesaver. Think about that empty, cold glass tower at the end. The exact thing Maya cried over losing, the thing she sacrificed so much for, would have ended up trapping her. When we get rejected, it feels like the end of the world. Maya's journey shows that losing out on what we think we desperately want is often just life's messy, painful way of keeping us out of a cave. That slammed door wasn't a punishment. It was the redirection she needed to push her toward a path where she actually belonged. Earning your calluses. Maya couldn't have designed that beautiful, thriving community if she hadn't struggled so much in that cold house first. That agonizing winter wasn't just bad luck, it was her lesson. We often want our dreams handed to us easily, but the hard times, the pain, the tears, the sheer exhaustion of having to rebuild from scratch are what actually build our emotional and practical muscles. The resilience and hands-on understanding she developed while fixing that ruined roof laid the foundation for the meaningful work she did later. Picking up the hammer. For a long time, Maya sat in the cold, feeling sorry for herself and waiting for the world to apologize for treating her unfairly. Everything shifted the second she bought a cheap hammer and climbed that shaky ladder. She stopped asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and started asking, "What can I do right now to survive?" The story is a beautiful reminder that true healing starts when we stop playing the victim to our circumstances, roll up our sleeves, and decide to work with the mess right in front of us. I hope you enjoyed this story. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe down below, and I'll see you in the next video.